Hello and welcome back to our life. Last time we solved some major family issues in Cove's family. So let's continue on, I guess. um guess let's do road trip. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity as both your family and Cove prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented an RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. You glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best as he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea, I can imagine. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was gonna be a snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. It was way too early. Way too early. Nope. You yawned and rubbed at your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from the dew, that helped to make you a little bit more alert. And then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling of critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on. Oh, she probably isn't very excited.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Rina's the youngest, and I never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for the younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car, there was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kyra was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on this floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between all the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with the moms. I would feel bad about them sleeping on the floor, especially if that's like all they were gonna get. And it's like, it's their RV. They rented it. Why are they sleeping on the floor? After all, it was supposed to be a trip for him and his family before yours ended up coming along too. Now he had been kicked out of every bed-like space and put on the floor. There had to be another way to organize things so it was better for him. I want to say you suggested sharing the loft with Cove, but I can guarantee you it would not have been something I would have suggested back then. Teenagers in one bed is awkward. Sometimes. He offered to sleep somewhere else. I could sleep on the floor whenever for one night so Cove could have a turn on the loft instead. You announced your idea to the group and everyone paused from what they were doing to consider it. Cove was taken aback by the consideration, like he hadn't thought about how he had clearly gotten the short end of the stick.
No.
There's no way you would be sleeping in the back while I'm with the moms. There's barely enough room for 3, we can't add a 4th. Then I can be on the floor for a night and he'll be on the floor for one night when Elizabeth is in the loft.
Sorry.
No can do, Rina, sorry. The 3 of us all together down there is bonding time. Cliff put one arm around Kara's shoulders and the other one around Cove, dragging them both into him. He smiled at his little show. I'm afraid I can't extend you an invite, you simply have to take the loft. Cove and his mom both shook their hands at Mr. Holden. And you had to agree that was a pretty weak excuse as far as excuses go. They were just being hospitable to your family.
Don't worry about it.
Thanks, Rina, it's alright. I can take the floor for 2 nights. And that settled the matter for good. Alright, your lord. Does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. We don't want to forget something important. After the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bed head hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, setting her hands on her hips. How about you, Rina? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries, deodorant, floss, anything else you can think of? Most of the time I do forget one thing. Sprinting up the stairs to the bathroom, you grabbed your toothbrush from beside the sink before heading back down. You were glad you were reminded to grab it after having left it out to use this morning. It would have been embarrassing if you couldn't brush your teeth for the next few days. Your mom was still there, waiting with a knowing expression as you walked out again. Got everything now, Rina? Yeah. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow, a blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things, such as... Well, my stuffed animal and portable gaming console, that would be those two. Without fail, always made you feel more comfortable whenever you went somewhere new. It was like taking a little piece of home away with you. And a gaming console. Your drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. And I usually have something to read. You had packed one of your old favorites and a new one you would never try before. You knew you would have plenty of time for them both on such a long drive. And that was everything. Hey, let me take that for you, Rina. I'll store it in an RV. There's a few spots left with it. You left Kara take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kara and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of everyone. They were finished packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into a storage compartment for the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV. A bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole idea now. Usually she wasn't one to extend the confines of a room unless it was for TV or food, or leave her family behind to be with friends. You wouldn't have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 hours would be too much for her. But it was a nice surprise. You supposed any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind? Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. This is a difficult question. I am the type who is pretty excited about going on vacation, and then on the second day I'm like, okay, I want to go home now. So, I guess we're eager to get to the destination. We've been looking up the park online and couldn't wait to explore everything it had to offer. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was a touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kara were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of the highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove stared to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax now too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out from the driver's seat and Mom took over. Mom was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial on the controls as it was the first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. We're making good progress. Yeah, maybe if you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, and the trademark grin of his slipped into place. I don't need sleep, I still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was home, and Kara rolled her eyes in amusement. That everyone has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So?
Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up there. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over to the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kara laughed lightheartedly.
Don't worry about that.
Lucky for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. I won't be driving again until tomorrow. Yeah, they can tease him further. You didn't have anything to add to the conversation, but it was pretty funny all the same. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s and must be older than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor, it's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kara wrinkled her nose and thought. Yes, I did, I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The IV lurched a little as it pinched up speed, and you held onto the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something gaze the top of your head before a weight settled on your red hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of the bag of potato chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. Why not? Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. You happily munched away as the conversation continued on, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by with the rest of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park, setting up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You had all dinner together while still driving, and some hours after you had arrived at your destination found a spot to park in for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there had already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger's seat. You must have done so while Kara was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kara herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from a spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Hall needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling into the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without much squishing. Get a good rest, Rina. We got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
Fantastic.
I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like that. There will be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while longer while your moms whispered about the park and forest in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, you eventually nodded off to sleep. The next morning you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. It was okay. It was nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Ma whined about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair, tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were double-checking and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you had stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in a massive trunk of either side of you. You know that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person. Smile, you two! You spun just in time for Kara to snap a picture of you and Cove together, before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protest that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Mom listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide, if you know so much about the place. Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. Oh, believe me, I'm used to parents being touristy. I've been on enough vacations to get used to that. I think the sensations around you is nice. Bird calls echoed all around you, and once or twice something would rustle in an underbrush. You strained your eyes through the trees for any sign of wildlife, and you managed to catch a glimpse of a rabbit bounding through the foliage. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks, rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at the cover as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was gonna say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on a vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not so sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even though it was a little awkward, and continued walking along. Just watch, next year they'll be talking about the new next amazing idea. She put on a fake voice deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'll save on the montage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You suppose he was used to it by this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. I knew she was gonna go there, I knew it. Maybe one day we'll be related legally anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. Cove. Oh my god, Cove. Oh my god, he's taking this really well. Maybe, I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth. What? Me? Don't sibling zone me, please. Yeah, that way Rina would be my sibling-in-law. That would be fun. Elizabeth stuck out her tongue at Cove as if the very idea were ridiculous. I would probably be kinda embarrassed. Why did she always have to say things like that? It wasn't fun and she knew it. After no further replies, your sister walked ahead. You and Cove swapped uncomfortable looks. The day continued on with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and sat out. A picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches and chips. No, that sounds very nice. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game of guessing the species that were heading out to the trees nearby. I should probably be better than average on this game, but I sure am not. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. I mean, like, if you're gonna do that, do it more than one day, come on. What you saw today was only a fraction of what the park offered, and you wondered why Cove's parents hadn't planned a longer trip. You sighed quietly to yourself, wondering if you'd get the chance to come back. Your group made it back to camp just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner, and then afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourself after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left the main lounge area. It's just the two of you, so you can hang out. We might as well get comfortable, who knows how long they will be out for. He took a seat on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible, it's easier that way. I would rather be cold than extra hot. It's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. Well, I don't exactly mind having layers. It's more like I need them because I get cold very quickly. And I also get hot very quickly. I don't mind either way. I just rest depending on the weather or how I'm feeling at the time. Cove smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. I guess we can do this? Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see on another person? Cove's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he had the chance to have a proper think about it. That... Oh, Cove, you know, this kind of answer is something you can get teased for years. This is the thing you can get teased for years, I am telling you. You're lucky I'm the only one who's probably hearing this. It was funny. It was funny. Not gonna lie. You laughed out loud and Cove gave you a dry look. I know, but it's still funny. I am allowed to laugh. Come on, that's not what I meant. You composed yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Answer with what you mean then. Isn't there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Cove mumbled under his breath and couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. I mean, if he doesn't have anything to talk about, I mean, if you asked me the same question, I would be like, I don't know. Shoulderless shirts? They are nice to look at, I must say. Tank tops on women look very good. Yeah. You weren't going to make him answer, so you let it go. The parents arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting, playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. I would absolutely wake up. I cannot sleep in things that are moving. Now was the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in a previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you would be back in your own bed at home. I mean, it wasn't that long, and also, since this has a long time to, like, on the move, I actually like when driving a long time to some place. It's very nice to play games and to actually read my books, because somehow I only read my books when I'm on vacation, so that's always a very good way to, you know, get to my backlog of books. So I would say I enjoyed it. It was short, there, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kara to drift up to you. They were asleep now. You wondered if Cove was still awake and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the darkness. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on the sleeping bag. You must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes looked onto yours. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out the crooked smile on his face well enough. Come on, let's make a silly face. A very important thing with friends to do is when you make a silly face, then they make it back, then it's the best feeling. Though I don't know if Cove is the type of person to mirror silly faces. Though it's always very fun when friends actually do that. Cove rolled his eyes at you, or at least you thought he did. Oh well. Get him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow and froze up like a deer in the headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually he managed to maneuver around his sleeping dad and make it up to the ladder, standing up on the bottom rung where he looked up at you and whispered, "What?" Good night. I mean, come on. It's the last day of this vacation. Do you want to come up? His eyes widened, just so. You could only tell because he had come to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly as his sleeping parents before turning back to you. Okay. You broke out into a grin and he scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. Even if you weren't exactly tall, the loft was still a tight squeeze with the two of you in there together. CG! You laid down next to each other on the side, face to face. He got under the blankets a bit. He's so gonna fall asleep there. I mean, look at him. One of his arms was nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go and was nestled alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. So, what am I doing here? Choices. Choices to make. Ah, come on, let's just choose the last one. It's more comfortable for him there. Cove raised an eyebrow, not having expected you to bring the topic up again.
It's okay.
You're still thinking about that? You don't have to worry about me that much, Rina, but thanks. It's okay. It isn't a big deal for us to be in the loft, right? Yeah, it's not some huge thing. We've shared a million times by now, and it's usually they're the ones encouraging us. Carver gestured in the direction of the parents, and you nodded in agreement. They had always tried to put you and Carver together ever since you were little. I wonder how much trouble we'll be in if we get caught. It wouldn't be nearly as much as we would have been if my moms found out you snuck into my room for the night at the start of summer. Even just imagining it. I still can't believe I did that and didn't get caught. It was a very dramatic morning. You could easily picture his frantic escape in your mind's eye. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you, Cove? No, I don't think so. Cove trailed off and he seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. Hey, do you remember the very first time I slept over at your house? He laughed quietly and nodded, the memory coming back to mind so vividly. A smile grew on his face. I left in the middle of the night. I hated being in a different place back then. Now I fall asleep in your house when I'm not supposed to because I couldn't help it.
Sorry.
I'm sorry I was like that. I just couldn't take any more changes when I was little. Choices. Why are you giving me choices? Let's encourage this time. I've already teased him today. Yeah, I think you've really grown. You smiled at Cove, showing sincerity, and he gratefully returned one with his own. You spent the rest of the nights mushed up in the little loft together, whispering about your past memories and trying not to giggle too loud at the silly things you had gotten up together over the years. Eventually, the chatting trailed off, and when you noticed Cove had drifted off to sleep, you followed soon after. When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled the long journey home. You noticed quickly that you weren't as warm as you had been during the night, and when you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to find out where he had gone. Maybe he had snuck back to his spot on the floor during the night? However, you soon noticed him sitting on a couch talking quietly with his mom, his head hung in embarrassment. Your movement gave you away and Kara suddenly looked up and caught your eye. She simply smiled amusingly at you and it was obvious what happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was gonna be a long time before you lived this one down, if you ever did. Soon your moms and Elizabeth emerged from the room, stressed and ready for the day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kyra suggested a few different travel games as she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. It was a bit too much for him to speak on, especially right now, you understood? You can always make fun of him for it later. When the RV finally pulled onto the street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days away. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning your RV would wait until morning, of course. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped into your bed, shoes and all. I'm happy to be in my own bed. You stretched yourself out with a smile on your face, enjoying having the space all to yourself. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow life would go on like normal. And I think today was eventful enough. So, I would say we continue next time. And until then, I would say bye.